Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Lauer,
Here.
Alderman Sage,
Here.
Alderman Miller-Lumway,
Here.
Alderman Stearns,
Here.
Alderman Painter,
Here.
Alderman Schmidt,
Here.
Alderman Black,
Here.
Alderman Howman,
Here.
Alderman Fruin,
Here.
Mayor Renner.
Here. Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and start out with public comment. Again, public comment for up to 3 minutes. I'm going to ask people to, since we have 6 people and 15 total minutes, I'm going to ask if you'd be as brief as you possibly can in respect for others. And we're going to start with Alton Franklin.
My name is Alton Franklin. I live at 508 Patterson Drive here in Bloomington, Illinois. I said this a number of times, and it's important to me. I'm going to say it again. If you have no integrity, you have no value. I don't know how you can value your own self. I don't feel a need for speaking to, I have in past times made a little play at a little statement that's made regarding for the regular and consent agenda, I've received no compensation. I also have no interest, and I think the people that know me know the integrity that I have and that I will die for. And that's really what it comes down to. My life, who I am, my word is my bond. And where I see that there's conflict, I will defer. I'm glad to see we are revisiting the issue. I hope we can give some measured thought, and I can hope that someone genuinely considers that interest is not, absolutely not restricted and limited to overt compensation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lambert. Gary.
Gary Lambert, 3018 East Oakland. It's been about 10 days since information on the McGraw Park situation became public knowledge. In that time, a lot positive and negative has occurred. On the negative side, we have politicians at both the state and local level who have attempted to use public funds to advance their own interests. On the positive, that issue's being reconsidered tonight. And also on the positive, I'd like to give commendations to our public media, the Pantograph, and all the radio stations for bringing it to the public's attention. I don't think we'd be here today without their involvement. The way I think the law is written is that's available for parks and trails. I have a suggestion. I saw in the handout there some of the recommendations. The trails are being used by 5,000 people a day. It's being used by all economic classes within the city. It's not favoring one group over another. I don't use the trail, but I think that would be a very appropriate use for that $750,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty Seigel, please.
Marty Seigel, 615 East Chestnut. I know that you all got a note from Dorothy Deeney from the Old East Side during the past few days regarding the section of trail between Walnut and Empire Street, and I just would like to reiterate that. I was just awfully disappointed not to see that section of trail mentioned on this list of considerations. This is a part of the trail that has sat fallow for 25 years. It's dangerous because of the way it's been constructed. It is land that should be, by rights, belong to the community because it is part of what was vacated by the railroad. And I just don't understand why it wasn't on the list. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Martin.
I attended the retirement reception for Sheriff Emery this afternoon, and he's been most instrumental in encouraging me to continue not only my work on elder abuse, but also speaking about it publicly, and I appreciate his support, as well as that of County Board member Victoria Harris, who greeted me by saying, "Hello, brave lady." Comments like this make me determined to continue my work, and I want to thank them for it. I'm currently preparing some information on problem-oriented policing, which was introduced to me by Assistant Police Chief Ken Bays at a recent public safety meeting. And I find the problem analysis module most interesting as the participants enter their concerns via computer, for example, elder issues, and the computer then generates answers that can be applied to their particular circumstances. And the answers become more and more detailed and intensive as you progress, making you think and think hard about what you're doing. I'll talk more about this later, as Assistant Chief Bays is currently on vacation and he needs to check some of my material before I tell you about it. I'm also interested in Triad, which is a program introduced to me by the Attorney General's office. It's a crime prevention program in which law enforcement officials and the elderly work together, and I quote, to determine the needs and concerns of older citizens and suggest further initiatives, unquote. I look forward to attending one of their meetings too, and will certainly share that information with you as well. I think they have them in DeWitt County and Champaign County and also in Chicago. Finally, I'm very excited about our current library expansion program. I've attended 2 task force meetings so far and look forward to more. I've been a long-time library patron from childhood on, and I'm hoping to help, even peripherally, develop our library further as a safe and comfortable place for people of all ages. And I know we have the ability to do this.
Thank you very much. Ms. Donna Boland, excuse me. I'm sorry, Donna.
I too am here to talk about the McGraw Park deal and specifically some of the discussion points that were brought up before the vote. And the first point is the conflict of interest, and the city ordinance is very clear in my opinion, and I'm not going to elaborate on that one. The second point has to do with the millions of dollars that have poured into Bloomington from the diocese. That money is loaned to the church to be paid back with interest. So in reality, more money is being poured back in the direction of the diocese. And it's all the Catholic Church members of all the churches locally that do that. It's the entire Catholic community. The third point has to do with the purchase agreement. I'm sure you're not aware, but 1/3 of the annual expenditures from all of the Catholic churches contribute to the support of the Catholic high school. So the school is subsidized. So in the purchase agreement, the upgrades would be subsidized by the entire Catholic community, not just the school. And I personally don't think that they need an extra special practice field. They have a beautiful football field that, again, was paid by the entire local Catholic community. The other point is the keys to the city. I do not believe that that should be considered an extraordinary gesture because it's a moral imperative for the Catholic Church to be hospitable. And as others have reiterated, I would like to see the grant money go into the general funds to follow the already established plan. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Josh Schmidgau? Good evening. Okay.
Hello, everybody, and highest thanks to those who serve on the council. Of course, you know who you are. They call me Fist Bump, of course, and I'm from City's 92.9 morning show with Ian Bain, and he says hi, by the way. This is a question for you. Why are we spending $750,000 by raising taxes in one sitting? we're going to screw the taxpayer. Can we at least wait for another meeting to spend the money? Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the information for people in the audience, we don't respond to individuals who make questions. We're moving forward here. We have an oath under appointments and recognitions by Stephen Rasmussen, our Assistant City Manager. Stephen, would you step forward?
Yeah. Pardon? Just very briefly, we did have a chance here a couple of weeks ago to introduce Steve Rasmussen, the new Assistant City Manager. And at that time, or well, tonight, we want to give the oath of office to him. So once you take this oath, Steve, there's no turning back.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. Thanks God, I forgot. I, Stephen Rasmussen,
I, Stephen Rasmussen,
having been appointed to the position
having been appointed to the position
of Assistant City Manager
of Assistant City Manager
in the City of Bloomington,
in the City of Bloomington,
in the County of McLean,
in the County of McLean,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of Assistant City Manager
the duties of Assistant City Manager
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephen. Wonderful. Thanks.
Look forward to working with you, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're moving right along to our consent agenda, and the items on the consent agenda are generally considered to be routine in nature, and I just wanted to first ask, are there any items that any members of the City Council would like to have pulled from the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Moved by Alderwoman Schmidt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Painter. Okay, any other comments, questions?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to read my statement, and that is that with regard to the consent agenda, I have not received any monies or financial benefits from any of the individuals or organizations referenced in the specific agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If everyone would please vote, appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. The motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving right along to our regular agenda, we have a reconsideration and action on a resolution authorizing the purchase of lots 47 and 48 in the Empire Business Park and a cooperative agreement with Central Catholic High School. Just as a clarification, we did pass this. The council passed this by 5-4 2 weeks ago this evening. There were some concerns about it. There were some concerns about a possible situation where there might have been conflict of interest. There were other possible questions following this. I had decided on Wednesday, following the council meeting, in a sense to exercise either whatever you want to call it, de facto or pocket veto. I signed all of the council documents that evening except those having to deal with Central Catholic, and this evening we are reconsidering it. The initial request was by an Alderwoman Painter on the prevailing side, and it would be required under Robert's Rules of Order to have someone on the prevailing side actually vote for reconsideration or to move for reconsideration. I could have vetoed this. If I had vetoed this, we would be here another 2 weeks. So formally, I would have to come here and say, I'm vetoing this, and at the next regularly scheduled council meeting, we'd come back and vote 2 weeks from now. So I thought this was the most expeditious way of handling it. There's no other agenda other than that. That's exactly why I did what I did under those circumstances. So we are at a situation where we are possibly reconsidering this, and I will ask for a motion for reconsideration.
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Painter. Is there a second to a vote for reconsideration? Could come from anyone, either side.
I'll second that.
Okay. Seconded by Alderwoman Schmidt. Alderman Fruin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep my comments brief. I think there was some conversation last 2 weeks ago about the length of my comments, and I will remind the council that the first 2 minutes of that conversation dealt with addressing a question from the public with regard to backroom deals. I hope I spoke for the entire council that there was no backroom deal on this. That took up the first 2 minutes of my comments. I'll try to keep these on point to why I voted 2 weeks ago and why I will recuse myself very shortly
I
here.
hate to interrupt, but I've got a point of order I kind of need to make before we get into this.
Okay, but before we get into any kind of debate,
And
absolutely.
you know, no harm, no foul here, Jim, at all.
Okay.
I'm just trying to make
If
sure
you,
that
so
we
if
dot
you have
our
a
I's and
procedural
cross our
question, let's get the
Yes,
procedures
sir.
up. Sure.
Under Robert's Rules of Order, I believe that in order to have a reconsideration, it must be at the same meeting. And that would be, and maybe our attorney can help me with this, Article 6, Section 36, doesn't that
I
limit
thought
us
it has to be
to...
at the next meeting.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't read it that way. Just a point of order. Thanks.
Okay. Jim, go ahead and continue.
Thank you. And I take my role very seriously, and I have taken my role very seriously for 20 years in the different capacities I've served the city of Bloomington. But my comments are made here in view of the community conversation over the past 2 weeks. I feel there's a need and a personal responsibility to accurately explain why I did not recuse myself from the vote of November 10th. My judgment that a conflict of interest did not exist was due to two primary considerations. One, the long-standing City of Bloomington Legal Department opinion that a conflict of interest exists when a person has an ownership or financial interest or has managerial authority within the entity being discussed. In the issue at hand, I have neither. The land use desired by Central Catholic represents 3% of the total time the land would be available to the entire community. My second point, my second primary consideration, the role of a Central Catholic Board of Trustee member is entirely advisory in nature, with the actual governance authority clearly resting with the Diocese of Peoria. The board's responsibility is in sharp contrast to the governance of our District 87 and our Unit 5 school boards. Totally different. As a secondary consideration, my 45-year post-graduation involvement with Central Catholic is well known throughout the Bloomington Normal community and within the City Council. This has been documented in my bio that has appeared on the city website for the past 7 years, as well as being noted in numerous City Council meetings over many years. I will close with this, that these comments are for no other reason than to explain my prior judgment. And with that said, I will now recuse myself in view of the mistaken perception of some that a conflict of interest exists. Respectfully.
Thank you very much. At this point, unless we have a vote, and this particular vote is just to reconsider, then we move to the substance of the reconsideration. So unless there are other, are you going to leave then, Jim? Okay. All right. Okay. Actually leaving the area. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, at this point, unless there are comments on the reconsideration itself, we will then move to the substance of this. So if you could vote on whether or not you want to reconsider this, yes vote is a vote to reconsider, a no would be to let the previous decision stand. Let's see. Let's see, we have Alderman Lauer is nay, one nay to announce, and then 7 ayes. The motion carries, and so we move to reconsideration. And, excuse me. Under the reconsideration, a resolution adopted, is there a motion to reconsider, excuse me, that in this specific, okay, the city council action on reconsideration resolution agreements authorizing the lots 47 and 48 in the Empire Business Park preliminary plan using a $750,000 state legislative grant. And do I have a motion? Either way, I'm assuming in terms of reconsideration, we're having a motion to change. It doesn't have to necessarily be. Right.
No, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, now the council is basically back at square one. So
Right.
a motion could be
Either
either to
way.
approve, to disapprove, or other action. So
Okay,
that's
that's kind of what I was saying, but I
Yeah.
obviously, is there a motion on this matter, since we have
That's right.
voted to reconsider this?
I don't understand what the motion, I
This would, under the, we're back to square one, so if we wanted to move ahead with the Central Catholic deal, then a motion to approve that would be in order. If we wanted to not move ahead with this, then a motion to disapprove this would now be in order, because we're essentially, we just voted to reconsider this matter right now.
I see. Mayor Renner, before there's any discussion, we need to have a motion on
Yeah, sometimes we've been a little loose with that, but I think at this point we should have a motion on the floor.
I'll make a motion that we disallow the deal from last meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second that.
Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. Okay, discussion pertaining to this. Let's see. Alderman Lauer, Howman, okay, Black, okay, a lot of people want to speak. So I would ask you to try to make your remarks as brief and to the point as possible. Alderman Lauer, thank you.
Well, not that I agree with him, and not that I agree with what he did, but in terms of legal precedence, I don't see where Mr. Fruin has a case that he would have to recuse himself. In real fundamental terms, this is not about Central Catholic at all. This is about Senator Brady and a grant to the city for a park. Okay? There is a secondary issue with a lease to Central Catholic that would actually refund the city for numerous preparations and the ability to use it for a certain period of time as a primary use. So that's a completely different subject in terms of the legal precedents here. So I don't understand why we're reconsidering on those grounds. Thank you.
Okay. Just to clarify, I would not feel comfortable, because I'm not an attorney, making the assessment that you've just made. That's why I've asked the Attorney General's office to tell us whether or not there was a violation. Let's see. Alderman Black was next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I'm supporting a motion to disallow these funds is that after the meeting last week, I received significant feedback from my ward. I attended 2 different neighborhood association meetings in that time frame, and the overwhelming feedback is that the idea of we want to make the community better through this grant is something that most people can agree with. But the disturbing part is the way in which it's so targeted to one specific area. So I completely understand. I stand by my comments from the last meeting where, we talked about how different groups, have rent out our parks and recreation department spaces and facilities at different times. But the feedback has been that there are better ways that we could spend this money that allow us to benefit the community as a whole. Nothing against Central Catholic. I appreciate, the institution in the community. I appreciate the fact that they are trying to address a problem that they have. But I think that based on the feedback from my constituents, it is overwhelming that we can use this in a better way and hopefully impact the community at large a little bit more forcefully. Thank you.
And on a point that you'd made, just to make it clear, the statutory language in the packet, when this was passed, the sum of $750,000 or so much thereof as may be necessary is appropriated from the Build Illinois Bond Fund to the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity for a grant to the city of Bloomington for all costs associated with enhancement to parks and trails, period. Okay? So if we did not spend this money on this project, there may be other projects, but we can't take this money and pave roads with it, just to make that clear. If we gave this money and we turned it down, the state of Illinois would not necessarily use it in any way other than they certainly wouldn't pay down pensions or they wouldn't lower our taxes. So that is the question that in the predicament that we're in right now. And in order, let's see, I had Alderwoman Howman and then Milawamboy and Painter.
So, Mayor, I just want to clarify, have we exhausted all options to be able to use or to control the use of the funds?
No, actually, I think in my conversations with people and others over the last 12 days, I think we have, I don't know that it's accurate. People in Springfield may lie to me. It wouldn't be the first. But I think I think this council has the authority at this point to decide what we want to do with that within the realm of parks and trails. So that's why it's on our agenda to begin that conversation, assuming this is turned down this evening, to move toward what this council's priorities are, and that's why we have Bobby Yurakovich here, who would present other alternatives. We've heard from some of our constituents this evening on other possible priorities that they think might be necessary.
And so timing, we would still be able to get this done?
Well, I think at this point, the more expeditiously we move, it's one of the reasons why I didn't do a veto, but the more expeditiously we move, I think the better.
Thank you.
Or the increases our probability of getting this money. Yes.
Mayor, if I could just help too. Basically, the DCEO officials have indicated if for some reason the council were to say no to using this money for the land purchase, but then they were to decide a separate project tying into parks and trails, the sooner we can get that back to them, the sooner they can prepare a contract that would come back to the city council for approval. It's the contract that ultimately is going to bind us, with the state to use the money for, a specific project together with all the rules and regulations associated with these state funds. So they certainly are waiting to hear whether it's one or another project.
So the bottom line is this might have been initially an earmark, but at this point, it appears to be a grant to the city of Bloomington, period. Alderman Milawamboy and Painter.
Okay, thank you. Well, this is in my ward, Ward 3. So I wanted to take a few minutes to, talk about, what I've heard and why I voted the way I did initially. I've heard from residents who have applauded me for voting no. That was good. But then I heard from residents who, shall I say, were not very happy with me for voting no. That didn't feel good. So I was really torn. Some of what I've heard, and I think you've heard that in the media through emails. We've received a lot of emails from people, and the arguments, on both sides, oftentimes make sense. And I'm not going to repeat each and every one of them. I think we kind of know them, what the arguments were. But what I believe is at the root of the problem was that not everyone having the same information at the same time. And I generally like to have as much information as possible to be able to make the best decision. So, at the time, I made the decision that I did with the information that I had. Since the initial vote, additional information has surfaced, either from residents, the media, or many other interested parties. And one of the new pieces of information includes the fact that the initial assumption for wanting to make this happen on Central Catholic's part was the fact that the land controlled by CIRA would no longer be available to Central Catholic. And we've also, learned that that assumption wasn't necessarily the way it was presented. Okay. So at this point, I feel like I'm not sure what to believe anymore. We have too much information, in different directions, too many people talking at the same time. I feel, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not prepared to change my vote, okay, at this moment, because I think it goes to credibility.
one of the things that I think, which is the defining issue, with government, is people's trust in government. And if people cannot trust, what we do, there is no point, in us being here. And so I felt, the need to distance myself from it because I just did not fully understand what was going on, and I felt like there were some things missing. And I think, so we're going to talk about different projects, possibly, and I also think at this point, if McGraw were to be in the picture again, the only way for me would be to get all the people who are involved in the same room, okay? Because the information kept changing as we went along, whether it was cost, whether who was affiliated with it, and that's just not a very good basis for decision, in my opinion. So that is where I stand at the moment. I understand that there will be a few unhappy people, but that's okay. I think that comes with having to make these tough decisions, because I know everybody's passionate on either side of the issue, but I think we'll move beyond that eventually. Thank you.
Okay. Alderwoman Painter.
When I originally cast my vote, I based it on the merits of the deal as it was presented. And shortly thereafter, I discovered that we weren't given all the facts. That, plus the fact that so many of my constituents called expressing their displeasure relating to this decision and giving me even more information pertaining to this deal that we weren't made aware of, that's all caused me to do a total 180 on this. The citizens deserve to be heard, and their legitimate concerns need to be addressed. That's why I made a motion to reconsider this vote. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Alderwoman Stearns, did you have go ahead.
I haven't spoken yet.
Yeah, no, I know. I didn't
No, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Nothing has changed. Nothing. And to me, there's a central principle. It's very simple. It's very clear. It seems to be clear to the taxpayers. This is public money. It comes from you. It comes from us. It's all the taxpayers. We put this money in. This is a grant from the state of Illinois in a bill, this legislative bill that is already funded. So much as it's distressing to spend money, the money of an entity that is so totally broken and owes public schools, public hospitals, on and on and on. Hospitals all over the state are literally suffering because of our state's insolvency and complete mismanagement, let's be honest. However, this particular bill cannot be given back to the taxpayers, this money. It can't be. Our not spending it, I don't think, would have any positive effects in Springfield. That's the information I've gotten from people who know this money is funded. It's already funded. So that being the case, though, here's the principle that I talked about last time, and I'm going to repeat it. It's public money. Therefore, it goes to the public. It goes back to the public. So if you are going to spend the money, which, again, I have huge reservations about spending the state of Illinois' money, would love to give it back to the taxpayers. But if you are going to spend it, for heaven's sake, spend it on a public purpose, something that every single member of the public can access if they wish to. Spend it on one of those schools that hasn't gotten paid, one of those hospitals, something the public can access and have, the full use of. Whether Central Catholic is going to lease, and that is part of the deal. They are going to get that right, so to speak. Whether it's 1% of the time, whether it's 20% of the time, it's a private school, period. And if we were just going to get the $750,000 to the city of Bloomington, then just give it to the city of Bloomington, which I think is about what is happening now. And speaking of facts and speaking of changes in things, I believe if we all remember, it was made quite clear that this couldn't be used for anything else. Well, guess what? It can be used for something else. So there's another issue with trust, and I totally agree with Imbocon trust. So anyway, my vote is not changing. It's got to be spent for something the public, all of the public, can access and enjoy. Lots of other things about this that are troubling, but for me, the principle is very simple. Thank you.
And just related to what Alderwoman Stearns had just mentioned, we have had executive session minutes on this that were dealt with because it was a property acquisition. And one of the things that I will be speaking with the council and the city manager on is if this goes down, then the executive session, there's no reason to keep the executive session minutes from the public. So they should be made public. And, we can certainly see the extent to which we had been led to believe that this was a really tight earmark, and that may not very well be the case. Apparently it's not. So anyway, at this point, if we will go ahead and, oh, I'm sorry. A yes vote is essentially to kill this project. Yes, because the motion that Alderman Black made, roughly, maybe we can have the clerk reread the motion. I'm sorry. And it was seconded by Alderwoman Schmidt? Okay.
So the motion will be to deny the resolution and the agreements authorizing the purchase of lots 47 and 48 in the Empire Business Park preliminary plan utilizing a $750,000 state grant.
Okay, so the yes vote denies this. That does not mean that we then move to a beginning discussion of what we would want to spend the money on as a council, our priorities. We don't make that decision tonight. It's just the beginning of a conversation, and Alderman Lowridge and
Point of order. I believe our ordinance reads that when we re-vote on this particular matter that we've already voted on, every member who voted before has to be present. Is that, maybe legal can help me with that. So I'm wondering about the absence of Alderman Fruin at this point when he voted the last time. The legality is what I'm wondering.
Sure. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
He's attended the meeting, but he's recusing himself the second time around.
Okay, second point. So if the Attorney General does come back and rule against our decision to go ahead and reconsider this, then it will overrule...
The Attorney General's office is not ruling on that. The Attorney General's office would rule on whether or not that Alderman Fruin should have recused himself.
And so if
2
they
weeks ago.
rule that he should have, then it will overthrow or overturn everything that we're doing here?
No. It has nothing to do with that whatsoever.
Okay, just for
because we had someone on the prevailing side, Alderwoman Painter,
right,
vote to reconsider.
Okay.
So we could have had a reconsideration that had nothing to do with, for example.
So it would just invalidate the last vote that we already
That's
have?
exactly what
this.
All right. Yeah. So we're starting from scratch right now.
Very good, sir.
Okay. So again, a no vote would be to deny.
No.
Excuse me. Yes vote would be to deny. I'm sorry. A yes vote would be to deny. Yes vote is to deny. The ayes have it by 8-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Okay. Thank you. I wonder at this point if you could bring Alderman Fruin back in. Thank you. And at this point, we want to keep this appropriately brief, just because we want to get some ideas thrown out on the table, and that is of some alternatives from our Parks and Recreation Department and hear from constituents about what our priorities might be. They do have to be a capital project related to trails and parks. And so we're not making any decisions. We're just throwing ideas out on the table. And those of you in the audience, if you have some preferences, you want to contact us, we may very well follow up with a work session and then a final decision sometime within the next 30 days. So when Alderman Fruin and City Manager Hales returns, we have a question by Alderwoman Schmidt. I'm sorry.
Shall I wait for them to return, or?
It's a procedural question?
No, it's a factual question.
Oh, okay.
I have reached out already if this were to happen, what if? And I've had a number of people ask me whether this money has to go to a single project or might it, might it go to a few or a multiple number of projects?
Okay, and I think we can have that legal answer. This, my understanding is that it could be a series of contracts. It does not have to be a singular project. Angela, do you know? I think Jeff Jurgens is the one. We will get a definitive answer on that. Mr. Hales may have had a definitive answer from Jeff Jurgens. My understanding was that, again, the legislation says for a grant to the city of Bloomington for all costs associated with enhancement to parks and trails. So it was, David, we actually have a factual question. I think I know the answer, but I don't know that I'm right. And that is, Alderwoman Schmidt had asked, can this be the $750,000 grant allocated to more than one singular project?
I believe it could.
Okay.
The only thing I would just suggest, right up front, I do think time is of the essence. Even the DCEO advised that what we really need to do, if you want to use this money, is get the contract only executed by both Governor Quinn and the City Council as soon as the governor-elect takes office. And given some things we're reading in the paper, who knows whether or not there could be action taken to stop, maybe contracts with any of these grants that have not been executed under the current administration. So DCEO certainly is willing to work with us. And second, but, they are saying they would recommend us move fairly quickly. And the second point I would just add is, I think this is a time when maybe we want to look at projects that could happen fairly quickly, say within the next year. Not that it would have to. Normally there's a 2-year time frame on all these projects, but as you do look at some of these, we have a lot of repair sort of projects on existing infrastructure. Again, those are just some additional thoughts.
And I was wondering if we could get a definitive answer to Alderwoman Schmidt's question, so that as we're thinking about this after this evening, maybe Jeff can make sure that that's the case.
And let me just add one other thing. Normal is getting about $500,000, and they're using it on multiple, park equipment, features, things like that. So it's not all one, single. So I just throw that out because in talking to the Normal Town manager, they're also dealing with the expenditure of a legislative grant for multiple. But we certainly can, get you a definitive from DCEO.
So I think at this point we would maybe ask Bobby Yurakovich to come forward and talk a little about some things that have been on our parks master plan, things that we in the council have established in the past as priorities as we move forward. And again, we have gone, understandably for this situation, we've gone way over time, and we've got roughly 20 minutes budgeted here. So just keep in mind, this is a preliminary conversation, just some ideas thrown out on the table.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, the good thing is that parks are not Catholic or Protestant or Lutheran or Methodist or anything else. So hopefully you'll be able to come up with something that is beneficial to all of our residents. But the first priority is typically park expansion of existing parks. And that's why McGraw park was attractive to someone like myself in the field, because it expanded an existing park and there was adjacent land. Since that's not going to be a possibility, I would consider that you look at other parks that have that opportunity as well, because that's the most long-lasting benefit to the residents is parkland. Get it into the public hands and be able to provide that service for our residents. Saying that, you've got a great Parks Master Plan, and the update, if you don't have the access to it, it's on the Parks and Recreation Department's website. You have to go to News on the right-hand corner, and you scroll down and you find news releases, and it's in there.
I wonder if we could, just to make sure that for some of the council members who would prefer to see things in hard copy, if we could get that to them as soon as possible.
No
Since
problem.
if time is the essence for us to make
No
a decision.
problem. I would say that this is your guiding document. This has already had public conversation, and a lot of focus groups went into this. A lot of people had comments about it. You'll find in there that Constitution Trail land acquisition is a big priority. You'll find that there are some other major projects like sports parks, and $750,000 isn't going to get us there. So don't even look at those. I mean, we need to be cognizant of the fact that it sounds like a lot of money, but it's not a lot of park money when you talk about park acquisition and development. So we need a project that's definable and doable within 2 years. So in saying that, I've heard from a lot of residents. My first day on the job was I was asked about dog parks. Well, that hasn't been successful because the parks that we do have are not appropriate for a dog park because they are typically surrounded by homes. So we look at other acquisition. Sports park is a high one, but like I said, that's going to be a big ticket item, and it's not going to be able to be doable with this amount. As you know, the parks budget has been cut drastically over the last couple of years. Capital improvements have been cut pretty severely. So we have some parks that are in need of replacement of equipment. We have some trail acquisition where we have gaps in the trail where we could provide some continuous service and some alternative transportation routes. We have a great jewel of the city of Bloomington is Miller Park. Miller Park itself has failing infrastructure when it comes to the building. It's a historical building, doesn't have an elevator. You know, it's rented more than any other facility that we have, so it does produce some revenue to help pay for things, but it has some major repairs. The roadway itself is crowned. It needs to be, fixed again, and stormwater needs to be improved there. Prairie Vista Golf Course is a high priority on our list because it's a high use and people are paying a lot of money to play there, yet the golf course paths are deteriorating, so that's a consideration. And then the only recreation center we have is the Lincoln Leisure Lincoln Leisure Center, and that parking lot is atrocious. I mean, it simply is. It needs to be completely replaced. I don't know if we could do it for this amount of money, but it's definitely a high need. So there's a lot of different things that we could do. I think that what I've heard from people is acquisition is the highest priority. Again, it's a high priority because it's the most long-lasting effect on your residents. It provides the most service. If there's adjacent parkland to an existing park, that's primo. If that doesn't work, then let's look at possibly Constitution Trail. It's a signature for the community. But again, this is your guide. So the city has done a great job of following some of the things here, and it's what your residents told you they wanted to do. So I would really encourage us to go back and perhaps, like you suggested, have a work study session.
So if we can make sure that everybody has a copy of that. If they want a hard copy, let's make sure they get a hard copy so that we can go through. Actually, if I can ask real quick, who'd like a hard copy? Just of that.
I need to double check and I guess make sure that what I have
Is still the.
Right.
So Alderman Lauer, Millawamboy? No. Just a quick hard copy. Alderman Stearns? Okay, well, 2 hard copies, okay? Actually, I wonder if I could have a hard copy too, so I can also bring it with me when I
I'd
go.
also caution you a little bit. There's a lot of discussion about how we can use this money for a lot of different things. It does require some approvals, okay? It does require DCO's approval. We need to go through the process there and make sure that it's acceptable to them. But we for sure want to make sure that we get the opportunity to use the money for the benefit of our residents.
Since, just if I could, one quick question, just as clarification. The legislation says for parks and trails, so I would assume the thing that would be most likely to be approved by DECA would be an extension of Constitution Trail. Is there there's definitely some things on the horizon that we could use, perhaps even along Sugar Creek?
Possibly. I think that, they want you to do a survey first. We've submitted that survey earlier from McGraw Park, and so now we're going to have to go back and request that's changed for a different survey if that's council's direction. So we do need to go through those approvals.
Okay. And so I'm guessing maybe...
Caution you to be quick and simple and...
Okay. I'm guessing then, Mr. Hales, we would probably want then to ask the council to take a look at this document and then maybe have a work session and then then if there seems to be some consensus from the work session, then we would move ahead at a later meeting for an actual vote and discussion on some options.
Yes, keep in mind too that we've only got 2 official regular meetings in December, the 8th and the 15th. So we may have to, if that doesn't work for us, we may have to look for a special meeting to have a little bit more discussion. And again, I do think it's going to be critical that the council take some sort of vote in December so that we can quickly get back to DCEO and stay ahead of that date of the inauguration and the change in governorship. So it's a very, very short time frame. So, and I would just, as Bobby mentioned too, I know there's always the desire to kind of do something new, new extension, but anytime you look at extension, we may not have engineering design, we may not have cost estimates, et cetera, et cetera. I'm concerned about getting too ambitious in the type of project we're looking for, projects that could be done, during this upcoming summer construction season, and it can be trail related. But I think there is some very serious, trail repairs that are needed, just like we've seen with the rest of our infrastructure. But nevertheless, we can continue to work on that and help give the council more information. But we'll get these reports ready, get them distributed, and the mayor, you and I can talk about when to kind of bring this back to the council.
We'll have at least one, well, probably several waves of substantive conversation. But Alderman Lauer and then Sage.
I would just like for you to look very, very closely, and I will be too, at our existing infrastructure such as streets and sewer, stormwater runoff around our parks. If it meets both criteria, I'd be much more apt to vote for it.
Well, I'd be thrilled, I thank you for that comment, because parks can serve a big part in stormwater runoff.
Alderman Sage.
And I would welcome the chance to have continued conversation about this. So I'll be brief in this comment. I'm referencing the park master plan, and I'm looking at page 81 and 82, which calls out park master plan priorities for near-term and future projects. First priority is park playground renovations, and that's what we've alluded to. And again, recollection tells me from our Citizen Summit meetings that one of the citizen priorities was let's maintain what we have. Right. Okay, and I think that's a sound principle. But right on the heels of that, in our park master plan, again, and I'm looking at my page 81, and it says, in addition to the renovation of these playgrounds, the following parcels should be placed on the high priority list for development. They are geographically in locations where additional services are warranted and in some cases overdue. And it lists 4 parks there. Wittenberg Woods Parks, Woodbury Park, Westwood Park, and Sugar Creek Park. That's, again, out of the master plan. Flipping over to page 2, there's some comments about some of the other parks. And then the final paragraph on page 82 says the final near-term priority would be the expansion of Constitution Trail. Okay? So what I'm going to be looking for is again, I know we've got a number of different dynamics that we're trying to manage here simultaneously in terms of scope, time, the resources hopefully will be available, and then making sure that aligns with the master plan as much as possible. So that'll be part of the conversation I hope we can have at a future time. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Again, I would ask us to be, we're way over time, but we're just talking about procedure. You can stay because we might have questions, but Alderman Milawambwe and then Stearns.
Thank you. Bobby, what I'd like to know is what about the updating process? So can you talk to us a little bit about how this was updated, the master plan, when, and who had input into that?
Okay, I wasn't here then, but I'll do the best I can. And I have some park staff here that could probably help. We contracted with a company called 3D Design back in 2010, and that consultant firm held focus groups throughout the community, evaluated all of our parks, evaluated our system, and came up with a list of priorities for each park as well as overall priorities. It did not assign dollars to it. I did not assign, any how-tos to the project, but just identified subjects.
Okay, thank you, because I thought there might have been something a little more recent than that.
Mayor, I did want to interject one thing. There also was a written survey that was sent out,
yes.
Another part of the citizen engagement.
Right, so it started with a needs assessment approach first.
Okay, thank you. And I have
Oh,
one
you do?
more.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because I know almost about a year ago, we had a number of members of the Indian community, so Indian as in Asia, talk to us about cricket. I'm sure you might have heard about that as well. And although I know it's not in the master plan, and it is?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, then if it is, then I think that's something that we should also look at, but it doesn't sound like it's one of the priorities, though. Right.
It requires a lot of land acquisition, that's why it
Land
wasn't
acquisition, okay, okay.
a easy priority.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to kind of, drop that in people's ears as something, I mean, they're a community that's very, heavily involved. They've contributed quite a bit
Yes, they have.
to our community, whether with culture and a number of different things, and very active in their volunteerism. And I think that's something that's been on their mind for quite a while. They've been waiting, I think, for a good 10, 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah,
yes.
15 years. So I think, eventually I think we have to do something, because if we don't, it kind of sends a statement as far as, how we value those individuals as well. So, because we have a lot of different, different sports venues and parks and things like that. So,
Okay.
just want to say
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Stearns.
The concept of infrastructure is, I think, we have some really badly failing infrastructure in our parks. You mentioned the roads and curbs at Miller Park, which are, pretty bad, pretty atrocious. I think that the citizens have told us over and over, fix what you've got, maintain, what you have. And as far as just regarding a public comment that was made about the Constitution, the concept of that park, ownership of the land obviously has to be established, I think, before we can do anything. And ownership is critically important, and it's a major issue before we move forward, Right. Correct. It has to be
Thank
owned
you.
or a long-term lease.
That's all I
That's
had to say. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we will get this information, and we will move expeditiously on this. And given the nature of time, I'm going to go ahead and move rather quickly then to the adoption of the 2014 tax levy for $23,719,066 as estimated. The staff recommends that the tax levy be approved in the amount of this. Is there before we begin the discussion, is there a motion then to approve this as presented?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Moved by Alderwoman Schmidt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Painter. Okay. Who would like to, any comments on this? I know we've just debated it already, but comments? Oh, yes, Alderman Sage.
Just a quick one, Mayor. I think it's worth reiterating the point you made, I think previously when we talked about this, that in effect, while the tax levy is going up, the amount that homeowners will pay is actually going down.
Yeah, about $1.30 for a house for a $165,000 home, I believe the figure
Right.
is.
And
It's because we have new construction and there's growth.
Right. And I think, and again, something that a comment that you made last time was that if property owners see their property taxes go up, the amount that's coming out of their pocket to pay, I think, and I don't want to
Not coming from us.
Yeah, it won't be because of the city of Bloomington.
Right.
So I think that's worth reiterating.
Right, and I
So-
think the council is generally, if not, maybe not always unanimously, but generally speaking, has said we would definitely want to hold the line on property taxes.
Right.
Or less.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Alderwoman Stearns.
I wasn't going to comment. I was just going to stick with my last comments when we talk about this, of the simple fact, but I do have one real quick question too. Are we sure about the EAV yet? Are we positive where the EAV is? I don't think we are. I think we're going through the appeals process right now, so we don't really know where our EAV is.
Mr. Hales, did you?
That's true.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to comment on that. We don't really know. If the EAV does go up, no question, property owners will pay a little bit less. But if we kept the levy, if we held the line on the levy, property taxes would go down a little bit more. There is no question. I sat down with the assessor when I first got on council, and he told me one fundamental fact. When you raise the levy, you are raising the taxes. There is no question. Your bill may be a couple dollars less. We don't even know that yet because we don't have the EAV. But raising the levy is saying to the taxpayers, we want more of your money to run the city. My basic philosophy has been, it is, and I guess, unless somebody changes my mind, which I'm open to, the city of Bloomington has a spending problem. And if we did what businesses and homeowners and heads of houses all over the city do, we would stick with the amount of money that we have, and guess what? We would make it work. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and vote. A yes vote would be to support the levy as presented. Okay, the motion passes 7-2. Madam Clerk, would you announce the two nays?
The nays are Alderman Lauer and Stern.
Okay. And we move right along to item 8C, abatement of debt service for the 2014 tax levy. And before I turn it over to the city manager for clarification, is there a motion to approve the resolution of the abatement?
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Painter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Black. Mr. Hales, would you like to clarify?
Just very briefly, the council each year is required to abate certain debt service payments, and if you fail to do so, then irregardless of what action you take on the tax levy, the county assessor or the treasurer will add these debt service payments to that levy. So as you've seen in the prior year history, even though the city has taken on debt obligations, many times it was with the understanding it would first use available general fund tax revenue to make those debt service payments and not the property tax. So this is a routine but a necessary step we need to take each year to make sure that except for the, I think it was a $2 million allocation of the tax levy for general bond and interest, all the rest of these debt service payments need to be abated so they don't have any impact, additional impact on the tax levy. We do appreciate even the very detailed, comprehensive analysis, not only in-house as well as our bond counsel, and we'd recommend tonight that the various resolutions for the abatement of 8.5 plus or minus $1 million of property taxes for the 2014 tax levy for debt service payments be adopted.
Okay. Questions of Mr. Hales? Okay. A yes vote then is in favor of this abatement. The motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Thank you. And we move right along to a longer presentation here. Item 8D, a presentation of the FY fiscal year 2014 comprehensive annual financial plan as audited. And we have a presentation of approximately 20 minutes and questions and answer for approximately 20 minutes. And I will turn it over to Mr. Hales. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I just want to draw attention to an employee in the audience, Paulette Hurd. You just raise your hand. Paulette is our chief accountant, and she has primary responsibility to actually make sure that the annual financial statements are prepared and to prepare all the required schedules and do all the other work necessary so that the financial statements are ready for the auditors as they come in and to review those financial statements as well as do random checks on city's internal audit processes and looks at many, many other things. Some point we will probably need to have you and other finance staff persons calculate how many hours go in in preparing for the audit. It is hundreds, if not thousands of hours, but I think Paulette is an unsung hero. You just need to know that the auditors couldn't do their job without Paulette and a very capable finance staff having things ready for them, you know, every May and June. With that, I'm pleased to introduce again tonight for what may be the seventh time, Chad Lucas. He's a partner with Sikich. This is their seventh audit that they have done for the city of Bloomington. We just want to kind of recap and let you know that not only have the electronic versions of all these reports been previously submitted to you, they've also been put out on the city's website. And just last week, I think we had the printed versions of the very thick city's comprehensive annual financial statement, as well as other reports submitted to you in your box. So hopefully you've had a chance to review that. We'll turn to Mr. Lucas for just some brief overview and comments before getting into questions you might have of Mr. Lucas in this fiscal year 2014 audit. Chad?
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to work with the city again this year. And I too would like to extend my thanks to Paulette and Patty Lynn and the rest of the staff who helped during the audit process. We know we can be a burden with the questions that we ask while they're trying to do their daily work. So we do appreciate all their assistance. They're very responsive and I'd like to acknowledge that. As Dave mentioned, I'm going to just briefly go through the financial statements, kind of hit a few high things that I wanted to point out, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions. There are a few things in the, a few reports that I wanted to touch on. The comprehensive annual financial report. I wanted to make a comment about the fact that you participate in the GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting program. This is the Government Finance Officers Association. And what this means is that your comprehensive annual financial report goes above and beyond the basic reporting requirements. It includes, in addition to the basic financial section, it includes an introductory section which has a transmittal letter that is written by management that gives some background about the city, about some projects that have gone on during the city. And it also includes a statistical section which includes trend information, financial trend information for revenue, debt, operating statistics, demographics, and those types of things. So you can see a kind of a 10-year trend information in that statistical section in the back of the CAFR. Just a couple of things to point out with this. The independent auditor's opinion is the only thing that's ours that's in this report. Our opinion is an unmodified opinion, which means it's a clean opinion. We believe that the financial statements are reasonably stated based on our audit procedures. Where you can kind of go to get the most bang for your buck in terms of reading a 200-page report is the management discussion and analysis. The management's discussion and analysis is written by management, and it provides some information about reasons why things increased or decreased during the year. Specific information. It's got condensed financial information, comparative last year versus this year, and reasons why things may have changed. So with that, I would just kind of like to point out on the very first section of the MD&A is a few bullet points that kind of have some financial highlights that I just wanted to point out. The city's total net position increased $1.8 million this year, and most of that is attributable to the results of the business type activities. The city's governmental funds ended fiscal year 2014 with a combined fund balance of $52.7 million, and this is an increase of approximately $7.3 million. A significant portion of that is related to the bond proceeds for the two bond issues that you had. You had one that was a refunding bond, and then there was another that was for street resurfacing. And I believe that bond was actually not spent at the end of the year. Most of it was still held at the end of the year. So there were no expenses associated with those revenues, which is why there was an increase in the fund balance of the governmental funds. The enterprise funds had approximately an $8.3 million increase from fiscal year 2013. So those are just a few things that I wanted to point out with respect to the financial highlights. I also did want to point to, I know that consideration that always comes up, future accounting pronouncements, and we have that in our audit packet, our board communications packet, but a few accounting pronouncements that are going to happen in the next couple of years relate to reporting of pension funding. And so in the required supplementary information of the CAFR is some information about your pension funding for your two pension funds, police and fire pension fund, your IMRF fund, and also for your other post-employment benefits. So That information's included in here currently. It's not, the unfunded liability isn't a liability on your financial statements, but under new guidance, GASB 67 and 68, in 2016, that will become a liability on your financial statement. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the CAFR.
I can see with that smile. Questions?
A couple of other quick comments. There were a couple other reports. A single audit report. We're required to do a single audit for any federal expenditures that you have. And this year you had approximately $1.8 million of federal expenditures. We tested 2 programs that made up about 1.1 of that, so about 60%. We did have an instance of noncompliance. It was not a material issue, but we're required to disclose if there's an instance of noncompliance based on our testing. It related to a reporting issue about approval. You're required to obtain approval from HUD, a request for release of funds, and there was a approval that wasn't received. So it was just an instance of noncompliance, not a significant deficiency or material weakness. We also did an audit of, we have a separate report on the Coliseum financial statements. That Coliseum financial statements is also included in the CAFR. It's just considered a fund of the city, so we issue a separate report on it, but it's also included in the CAFR. Again, that was an unmodified opinion, and there were a couple other things. The auditor's communication to the mayor and city council, this is what we consider the board packet. This is where you have your, where we disclose significant deficiencies, material weaknesses, recommendations for improvement. That packet includes all of those recommendations, but it also includes responses from management. So you can see in there what their proposed plan is to address those issues.
Comments, questions? Alderwoman Stearns.
Thank you very much. What's the best way if we do have a question? Because I'm going through the CAFR slowly, and especially as we get closer to budget and all that. I was glad to see that we got it on time this year. What is the best way to contact you? Just by email if we had a question?
That's fine.
Directly?
Absolutely. They have my contact information.
And I would first suggest if you would please contact Patty Lynn or Paulette Hurd. There may be, answers we can quickly provide to you. If we need to go to Chad, we'll go and get his response and share it with all the council.
I know at one point in the past we actually had meetings with you. Remember that?
Yes, and we did that again this year. I met with the mayor during our audit process.
And as council, we were invited to individual meetings at one point. I know I had one. Right, Chad?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So if I do want to contact, since we're not having meetings anymore, obviously I can just email Chad if I should decide to. Is that right? I mean, I don't see a problem with it.
And again, if you just,
Okay.
First check with that, but will you comment on those meetings? Because I think usually at the beginning of an audit, you'll reach out to the governing board members. Do you just want to mention what those are for?
Sure, yes. As a part of the audit process, we're required to do what we call SAS 99 interviews, their statement on auditing standards. And we're required to have conversations with various individuals throughout the city to inquire if they're aware of any fraud, if they have any suspicions of any fraud, if they're aware of any weaknesses in internal controls that they may be aware of that are potential risks. So we have those, throughout the organization, different departments, and we're required to have it at least with we try to do it with either the audit committee chair. Since you don't have an audit committee, we had a discussion with the mayor. So,
And I don't think there's any reason why, if there were some specific issues that, you could even schedule a meeting
absolutely.
if necessary. But
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, obviously we're the governing board, so
right. And that's all I wanted to clarify.
Right.
Thank you very much, Mayor Renner.
Thanks. Okay. Anything else? Oh, Alderman Black. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you're.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you. This is some light reading, and I appreciate it. This being my second audit that I've been involved with, kind of reading some of the material here, I guess my question is more for David. They highlight a couple of the internal control deficiencies. Can we speak to some changes that we've made internally that maybe they've recommended that have impacted it this year versus last year?
Very much so. And first, let me say that we're very much indebted and appreciate the council about four years ago approving us investing in the new Tyler Munis financial software system. That has been extremely critical in helping us tighten up our internal controls. But yet we still have additional mileage, improvements to make. There were some of these recommendations, let's see, six of these items that were addressed, and we closed the loop. But I do want to also mention to you that one thing we are working on right now is to take all the remaining recommendations and see, my goal is to try and achieve 100% of resolution of these, before the end of this fiscal year. Now, we may not, meet that, but as I met with Patty and Paulette and even the directors this morning, our goal is to try and, wherever we can, even if it's by manual processes, how can we make sure we're addressing, especially the recommendations for improvement. So we're going to put a high priority on that. I will say this, that over the last couple of years, we've increased our capacity to have more time for this, and we're going to look to Paulette and the finance to do this verification to ensure that we put in place, even some additional recommendations. There's always going to be that cost-benefit analysis. You may never get the kind of segregation of duties you would like in any organization, but we take these very seriously, and we're making a very strong effort over the next couple of months to address, all these if we can possibly do so before the end of this fiscal year.
Thank you, and thank you.
Alderman Miller-Wambwe.
Sure. Dave, I'm sorry if you mentioned this, but I know in the budget we put an item for an internal auditor, right, to be hired?
Yes.
So where are we with that, and, how do you think it's going to help, this whole process improve?
The finance director is preparing a recommendation. We hope to bring that to the council in December. It would be a recommendation to accept one of the proposals, and one of the key initial tasks of that particular vendor would be to do this fraud risk assessment citywide to help us identify where are some of the weaknesses, how should we prioritize those so that as we move from this full organizational assessment, where should we continue not only this year but in the years ahead, continue with some very specific internal audit activity and initiatives. And certainly those will be things we'll be bringing back to you so you kind of have information on what's going to be the agenda or the action plan for internal audits on a year-by-year basis. So you'll see more about that here hopefully next month.
Okay. All right. I think looks like that's it. Thank you again for all your work.
Thank
you. Again, if we have anyone who wants to get in touch with you or even wants to meet with you, we will follow up. Okay. Thank you. At this point, we move to city manager's discussion. Mr. Hales?
Mayor and Council, just want to, I heard from Bobby Harakovich this morning, we're still looking for volunteers to help with the turkey trot activity Thursday morning in Miller Park. Anyone who wants to volunteer, they need to get in touch with you. But 8 o'clock.
8 a.m.?
But this is an annual tradition there.
What do you need, Bobby? Okay, thank you. All right, so we know.
I also want to just share with you that Les Siren is serving as interim fire chief. We are moving aggressively. We have notified all fire department employees we're going to do an internal search, so we've opened it up to those who qualify to apply for the fire chief position within the fire department. We're hoping to kind of actually get into interviews, during the December time period. And I also just want to go back, as I mentioned the audit, I failed to mention Patty Lynn Silva. As director, she's also very involved But as with any director, she has the entire department to be involved with. She's very much involved with the budgeting. But she does review the final financial statements and is very much involved in a lot of the recommendations for improvement. But again, our hats off to the finance staff for this great accomplishment. We have no doubt that we will once again receive an award for excellence in financial reporting from the Government Finance Officers Associations. And with that, just wish everyone a happy and a joyous Thanksgiving season and the rest of this week. So turn it back to you, Mayor.
Just one point, we will have the lighting of the holiday season tree in Withers Park on December 5th, but unfortunately, I won't be able to be there. Mayor Pro Tem Karen Schmidt will be. I'm going to Chicago that evening to accept the award by this state organization that is giving us an award for our pension policy, not just our policy, but following up with the dedicated funding mechanism. I'll be able actually to talk about our levy this evening because that's also dedicated to police fire pensions, that extra increment. So I'll have extra bragging rights as I go a week from Friday. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Karen Schmidt, for filling in.
Well, and I think I'm going to be joined by Billy and Amos, two downtown pugs, who will be dressed up as reindeer.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. And again, I would like to wish all of my colleagues.
You really want to change your mind, right?
I can't at this point. But I do want to wish all of my colleagues, hope everybody, and our staff, you have a wonderful holiday. I mean, this is definitely the time to give thanks for all kinds of things. And so many times it's so easy when, we are a very gifted, wealthy community to take things for granted. But anyway, thank you. That's all I have to say. And our aldermen and women, any comments? Start
Just
with
want to
Alderman
put a plug in Ward 1. We are very proud of Home Sweet Home Mission and their plight to feed the homeless and those that can't feed themselves. And I'm very proud of the community for supporting them. So thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Lauer. Absolutely. All right. At this point, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Alderman Milwaukee. Second? Second by Alderman Howman. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Jim?